So as Keith said, last year, the core team approached me to do a bit of research and some work on the whole area of leadership development specifically. And and you may remember that I was at one of the hubs just a few months ago, and Keith had an interview with me, and we talked a little bit about it, and I asked him participation. At the beginning of the project, there was two outcomes that we wanted to set out to achieve. First, we wanted to explore the whole area of leadership development. We wanted to uncover the latest research, insights, theories, and we also wanted to map out what was going on in the churches around the UK. How were churches addressing this need? And finally, I think most importantly, we really wanted to discover what was going on in the network. What were the needs in local churches? What were the challenges? What were the success stories? And how did our local and national context impact this area of developing leaders? So there was some desk-based research, but also over 20 hours of interviews, which were the most fun part of the whole process for me. And I want to just quickly share with you some of the results in 4 areas this time. So the 4 areas are leadership development, Scotland, and then the network. So on leadership, you'll be glad to hear, as most of us are in some ways involved in leadership, that leadership is still key to organizations, whether it be church or otherwise, long-term success and health. Indeed, many studies show that leadership is the key, or one of the most important things about that long-term sustainability. But there is, and sometimes we're overusing the word crisis, a sense of a challenge or a crisis in leadership across the world, and whether that be in the marketplace or in the church. There's a sense that there's not enough leaders to step up into roles, but also the whole idea of what leadership is, what it looks like, what it feels like, what role it has is also being questioned. So how about leadership development? Well, some good news and bad news. The bad news is that many of the old leadership development models that we've been maybe grown up with or been used in the marketplace as church are being found to be ineffective. So kind of classroom teaching models where you took in just leadership, nothing against Don's thing. I'm a big fan of theological education, but the idea of that leadership and skills in leadership can be learned alone by information transfer via the classroom has been found to be ineffective. 80% of US companies recently surveyed said they were dissatisfied with their leadership development. And those programs are costing hundreds of millions of dollars. But the good news is there are some simple, effective tools that we can use in our local context and around Scotland as a network that can really make an impact on leadership development. And you'll not be surprised what they are. They're the things that probably have impacted all of us. It's about networking with people, giving people opportunities to use their gifts and to then have chance to feedback, to learn, to be coached and to be mentored. It's these sort of environments that can provide real effective leadership development opportunities. One of the most interesting parts of the process for me was looking at this, how our Scottish context and how that impacts it. And it's amazing to see that history, unsurprisingly, still rolls on and impacts us. So we have this mixed heritage, I think, with leadership and the church in Scotland. We have this great heritage of pioneering ministry and mission that's impacted the world. But we also sadly have the Great Disruption. We have this great history, this history of schism and division sometimes. And that still impacts us today, I believe, with some silo thinking and silo acting. And indeed, that's surely one of the key things the network seeks to address, that we would work together for the kingdom of God. Statistically, there's some fairly challenging facts that are around. You may be aware of some of the challenges that Church of Scotland, our brothers and sisters there, are facing. In their most recent national conference, they announced that 40% of their ministers are within 5 years of retirement. 40% of their ministers 5 years from retirement. But when we look, there's been also statistical work done across all denominations. That would include churches like ours. The picture doesn't look that much brighter. Less than 5% of all church leaders are under the age of 40. I'll say that again, less than 5% of all church leaders in Scotland are under the age of 40. The average age of a church leader in Scotland is 57. And I haven't done much statistical analysis on all of you here today, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're not far off that. Not only are our leaders older, but they're predominantly white. So 97% of leaders around Scotland are white and 79% of them are male. And our leadership in our churches aren't reflecting society that we seek to serve. And I would suggest this is a problem for us. The best part of this project for me was interviewing church leaders and what was going on. And it was really fascinating to find out what was working in local churches. I haven't got time to explain and explore all that. But there was a couple of things that I think that really are worth mentioning. First of all, the idea and the word of leadership is a barrier for a number of people, for those who are stepping into leadership. That idea, that word, maybe it's a tall poppy syndrome, that fear that if you put your head above the parapet, you're going to get shot down. But that word is a challenge for many. Also, and maybe linked to that, the busyness of some of our members of our church. It was really well summarized by this one quote, which I thought was fantastic, by someone who is here. So you'll get a shout out. People are, they're members of their church are happy to help, but not to lead. And I think that's a great summary of that, maybe that hesitation in leadership, but also about busyness. They're happy to help, but not to lead. And lastly, I had a brief review of the network. And I think that we have some great things to celebrate as a network that position us in a place where we can step out on this, because we believe in fresh thinking, fresh doing, and engaging in new ways. And that therefore positions us in a place where we can maybe start to explore new models that are effective. But there is a challenge. If we're going to step into this, we're going to have to change gear. This is not something that we have done in this way as a network before. It's not about change direction, but it's about a change of gear. And if we're going to work effectively, and I think it is the best thing to develop leaders would be for us to work together, then we're going to have to change gear to do this. And this links nicely to my last point, which is the second outcome that we wanted to achieve when we started this project. So the first one is to explore where we are with leadership development. And the second one is what we might actually do. What would it look like if we began as a network to address this problem and develop and train leaders together? Now, I have begun some pencil sketches of what that could look like, the models. I've hinted at a few things like coaching and mentoring that could be really key for us as we work together. But this is where I need all of us to engage, because it isn't for me to determine how that looks like. It's for us to engage with it. And so the first thing, the most important thing would be to get in contact, to start a conversation. So start by coming and having a chat with me over lunch. I don't mind if you come to me for a few minutes and then go and see Don or one of the other groups, that's fine. But come and touch base with me. Or you can get in contact with me by email, and it has just been pinged out on the chat. So if you want to get in contact with me via that way as well, I'd love to be able to make a contact. And then lastly, I am going to be contributing to one of the regional hubs that's coming up in the next few months, and we can carry on that conversation.